I'll admit it. I'm not the kind of guy who makes decisions lightly. Some people thrive on spontaneity, but I've always been cautious, overthinking every choice to exhaustion. Maybe it's because I've been burned before, or maybe it's just my nature. Either way, when I decided to propose to Emily, my girlfriend of a little over a year, it was after endless nights of weighing my fears against my hope. Emily came into my life at a time when I didn't think I could ever trust again. 3 years earlier, my world had fallen apart when I discovered my wife of 5 years had been cheating on me for over a year. It wasn't just the affair that broke me. It was the elaborate web of lies, the gaslighting, and how she made me question my sanity when I confronted her. I'd caught her one evening when she left her phone on the kitchen counter while she went to shower. A notification popped up, and curiosity got the better of me. What I saw shattered me. Explicit messages, plans to meet up, declarations of love, all with someone I'd considered a close friend. That betrayal left me broken. I cried more than I care to admit, not just from heartbreak, but from a profound sense of failure. My self-worth was annihilated. For months, I couldn't look at myself in the mirror without seeing the fool she'd made of me. Friends and family tried to support me, but the humiliation was too raw. Eventually, I filed for divorce, cutting her and the poison she brought into my life out for good. When I met Emily, I wasn't looking for love. I wasn't even sure I believed in it anymore. She was a friend of a friend, introduced during a casual game night. She was warm, funny, and, most importantly, patient. She never pushed me to open up, but always made herself available when I needed someone to listen. Over time, I found myself smiling more, laughing at her terrible jokes, and slowly letting her in. It took nearly a year for me to realize I loved her. Even then, I was hesitant to move forward too quickly. My parents and friends were the first to nudge me toward proposing. "She's perfect for you," my mom would say. "Don't let your past ruin your future," my best friend Greg reminded me. But the fear of repeating history kept me paralyzed. Emily, for her part, never pressured me. If anything, she seemed more focused on helping me heal than planning a future together. It was her patience that finally won me over. I told myself she wasn't my ex-wife. She'd been nothing but honest, supportive, and loving. So, after months of deliberation, I picked out a ring and planned the proposal. When I got down on one knee during a weekend trip to the mountains, her eyes filled with tears before she even said yes. That moment was the happiest I'd been in years. For the first time since my divorce, I felt like I could finally move forward. We spent the next several months planning the wedding. It was exciting but also overwhelming. My family adored Emily, and so did most of my friends. The one exception was my cousin Tyler. Tyler and I had grown up together, practically like brothers. But as we got older, we drifted apart. He was always the life of the party, the guy who turned heads at family gatherings with his charm and confidence. I was the quiet one, the guy who hung back and let others take the spotlight. Tyler had a way of getting under my skin without even trying. Maybe it was jealousy, or maybe it was just our clashing personalities. Either way, we tolerated each other for the sake of family but weren't particularly close. When Emily and I got engaged, he was one of the last people to congratulate me. I brushed it off as just Tyler being Tyler. As the wedding date approached, the usual nerves started creeping in. But they weren't the kind of doubts I had before proposing. These were normal jitters, I told myself. Nothing more than the weight of a big life change. Emily reassured me every time I voiced my concerns. "You're going to be an amazing husband," she'd say, kissing my cheek. "I love you, and I'm so lucky to have you." For the first time in my life, I felt like maybe I wasn't such a loser after all. 2 weeks before the wedding, my parents hosted a family dinner to celebrate. Emily came along, charming everyone as always. Even Tyler seemed unusually friendly, cracking jokes and complimenting her on how beautiful she looked. I didn't think much of it at the time. Emily had that effect on people. She could win over even the toughest crowd. It wasn't until later that night, after most of the guests had left, that things took a dark turn. Tyler had been drinking heavily, as usual, and was slurring his words as he stumbled around the living room. I was in the kitchen, helping my mom clean up, when I heard his voice from the other room. "Man, your fiancé is something else," he said loudly, his tone smug. "You're a lucky guy, for sure." Trust me, I'd know. I froze, a dish slipping from my hand and shattering on the floor. My mom looked at me, confused. What's wrong? She asked, but I didn't answer. I walked into the living room, my heart pounding in my chest. What the hell are you talking about, Tyler? I demanded, my voice sharper than I intended. He smirked, leaning against the couch for balance. Relax, man. I'm just saying, she's got skills. Real skills, if you know what I mean. The room fell silent. My dad, sitting in his armchair, stared at Tyler with a mix of confusion and disapproval. My mom stood in the doorway, her hand covering her mouth. Emily, sitting on the other end of the couch, looked pale. Her hands were shaking as she clutched her phone like a lifeline. When our eyes met, she looked away, tears welling up in her eyes. What the hell is he talking about, Emily? I asked, my voice cracking. She didn't answer. Instead, she stood up and bolted for the door, covering her face with her hands. I followed her outside, ignoring the confused murmurs from the rest of the family. Emily, I shouted, grabbing her arm as she tried to leave. What's going on? Tell me. She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Between gasps, she finally choked out the words that would destroy me. It's true. I slept with Tyler. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. My ears rang, and my vision blurred as the weight of her confession sank in. I let go of her arm, stumbling backward as if her touch burned me. You what? I whispered, barely able to speak. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. It was a mistake. It happened months ago, before you proposed. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't wait for her to finish. Without another word, I turned and walked away, leaving her crying in the driveway. My mind was racing, and my chest felt like it was caving in. The nightmare I thought I'd escaped was happening all over again. I don't even remember driving home that night. The whole world felt like it had shattered into slow-motion pieces around me. My hands were shaking as they gripped the steering wheel, my heart pounding so loudly in my ears that it drowned out everything else. Emily's voice, her sobs, her excuses, they all blurred together in my mind like static. When I finally stumbled into my apartment, I sat in the dark for hours, staring blankly at the wall. Tyler's smug grin kept flashing in my head like a cruel joke. My own fiancée with him. How could I have been so blind? The memories came flooding back, the little moments I dismissed as unimportant. How Emily had laughed too hard at Tyler's jokes during family gatherings. How Tyler would find any excuse to stand near her. How she once pulled her hand away too quickly when I reached for it at a barbecue because Tyler had walked by. I told myself I was imagining things. Don't let your paranoia ruin a good thing, I had thought. But the truth had been right in front of me the whole time. The next morning, I woke up with a splitting headache from lack of sleep. My phone had blown up with messages, texts from Emily, missed calls from my parents, and even a few texts from Tyler. I ignored all of them. Around noon, there was a knock at my door. I knew who it was before I even got up. I opened the door to find Emily standing there, her face pale and tear-streaked. She looked like she hadn't slept either. "Can we talk?" she whispered. I didn't want to. Every part of me screamed to slam the door in her face. But some morbid curiosity, some need for answers, made me step aside and let her in. She walked into the living room, hugging herself like she was trying to keep from falling apart. I stood by the door, not moving. Why? I finally asked, my voice hoarse. Why him? Why my cousin? She wiped at her eyes, but the tears kept coming. I don't know, she whispered. It wasn't planned. It just happened. It just happened? I repeated, my voice rising with disbelief. You accidentally fell into bed with him? She flinched, but I didn't care. I wanted her to feel every ounce of the pain she'd caused me. It happened one time, she said, as if that made it better. I was drunk. We were at that family cookout last summer, and you had to leave early for work. Tyler kept me company, and one thing led to another. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The pieces clicked into place. That was the night I'd noticed she seemed distant when I came back the next day. She hadn't looked me in the eye for weeks after that. I'd thought it was because we'd had a minor argument about me leaving early. I never imagined. You're unbelievable, I said bitterly. All this time, you let me believe we were happy. You let me propose to you. You let me plan our future while you were hiding this. I didn't want to lose you, she cried. I regretted it the second it happened. I love you, not him. Do you even understand what you've done? I asked, my voice breaking. You didn't just betray me, you betrayed us. And you destroyed my family in the process. Tyler's practically a brother to me, and now, how the hell am I supposed to look at either of you again? She stepped forward, reaching for my hand, but I pulled away like her touch was poison. Please, she begged. I'll do anything to fix this. We can still get married. We can go to therapy, talk to someone, anything you want. I laughed bitterly. Therapy? You think therapy can erase the fact that you slept with my cousin? That every time I close my eyes, I see the two of you together? Her face crumpled, and she sank to her knees on the carpet, sobbing. I felt a flicker of pity, but it was swallowed by the rage and heartbreak coursing through me. I can't marry you, I said, the words final and heavy. We're done. She cried harder, but I forced myself to turn away. I couldn't be in the same room as her any longer. I walked into the bedroom, grabbed a suitcase, and started throwing clothes into it. Where are you going? She asked through her tears. Away, I said shortly. I don't know where yet, but I can't stay here. Not with you. She didn't try to stop me. She knew it was over. Leaving the apartment didn't give me the relief I'd hoped for. I stayed with my best friend Greg for a few days, but no matter where I went, the betrayal followed me like a shadow. My parents were devastated when they found out. My mom cried for days, caught between comforting me and trying to process the fact that Tyler, her nephew, had destroyed our family. I blocked Tyler's number immediately after that night, but that didn't stop him from showing up at my door one day while I was packing up my things. Can we talk? He asked, his face unusually somber. I wanted to punch him in the face, but I didn't have the energy. Instead, I just glared at him. You've got 2 minutes. He shifted uncomfortably. Look, I screwed up. I was drunk and, I don't know. I didn't mean for it to happen. You didn't mean for it to happen? I repeated angrily. Stop acting like this was some random accident. You knew what you were doing. I'm sorry, man, he muttered. Sorry doesn't cut it, I said coldly. You knew how much I loved her. You knew what I went through with my ex-wife. And you still did this. You're not just a bad cousin. You're a pathetic excuse for a man. He looked down, shame on his face. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said quietly. I don't know what else to say. I stared at him for a long moment, my anger boiling just beneath the surface. There's nothing you can say, I said finally. Get out of my sight. I don't ever want to see you again. He hesitated for a second, as if he wanted to say more, but then he nodded and walked away. That was the last time I saw him. The weeks leading up to what should have been my wedding day were some of the darkest of my life. Every reminder of Emily, the photos, the invitations we'd already sent out, the wedding venue reservations, felt like salt in the wound. I canceled everything, swallowing the financial hit. My friends and family rallied around me, trying to distract me, but nothing helped. One night, I broke down in front of Greg. Why does this keep happening to me? I asked, my voice raw. First my wife, and now Emily. What's wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with you, Greg said firmly. You just have terrible luck with selfish people. But that doesn't mean you're unlovable. You deserve better. I wanted to believe him, but the doubt clung to me like a second skin. I had given love 2 chances, and both times it had been thrown back in my face. The Emily I thought I knew didn't exist, just like my ex-wife had been a stranger hiding behind a familiar face. Love felt like a cruel joke now, and I wasn't sure I'd ever be ready to trust anyone again. The morning of what should have been our wedding day, I woke up to the sound of silence. No alarm, no calls, no texts. Just an empty, hollow quiet. I stared at the ceiling, my heart heavy with the weight of what could have been. Somewhere, in some alternate universe, I was probably getting ready, adjusting my tie while Greg made stupid jokes to calm my nerves. Emily would be laughing with her bridesmaids, waiting for her walk down the aisle, but not in this world. In this world, I was alone. I got out of bed and brewed a pot of coffee I didn't even want to drink. The sunlight streaming through the window felt offensive, like the universe was mocking me for surviving another day. I sat on the couch, staring blankly at my packed boxes. I'd officially decided to leave the city. I needed distance, a fresh start, something to remind me that there was still life outside the ruins of my broken heart. I scrolled through my phone, passing message after message from friends and family. They meant well, but their pity felt like a knife. There was one message, though, that I wasn't expecting. It was from Emily. Emily, I know you don't want to hear from me. I just wanted to say I'm sorry again. I'll always regret what I did. I hope you find peace. I stared at her words, reading them over and over again. I wanted to feel something, anger, bitterness, maybe even the faint ghost of the love I once had for her. But all I felt was exhaustion. I didn't reply. Some things don't deserve closure. Later that afternoon, I drove to the spot where I'd proposed to her, the overlook in the mountains where we'd shared that perfect moment. I don't know why I went. Maybe I wanted to remind myself that the happiness I'd felt that day had been real, even if everything after it was a lie. The view was just as beautiful as I remembered. The trees stretched for miles, the horizon painted with streaks of orange and gold. I stood there for what felt like hours, letting the cold wind numb my skin. Memories of Emily flashed through my mind like an old movie reel. The way she'd smiled when I slid the ring on her finger, the way she'd wrapped her arms around me like I was the only thing that mattered. For a second, I let myself grieve for that version of her, the one who'd felt real. Then I took off the ring, the one I'd bought with such hope and fear, and threw it as hard as I could. It vanished into the trees below, swallowed up by the vastness of it all. And just like that, a small part of me felt lighter. The hardest part of the aftermath wasn't cutting Emily out. It was the fracture that Tyler had left in our family. My mom was devastated. Tyler was her brother's son, and she'd watched us grow up like brothers. Losing him was like losing a limb. At the next family gathering, there was an unspoken silence where Tyler's presence should have been. My mom cried when she hugged me, whispering that she wished she could fix everything. But I wasn't the one who needed to be fixed. Tyler hadn't just ruined his relationship with me. He'd burned every bridge with our family. My uncle tried to stay neutral at first, but after everything came out, he couldn't look me in the eye without apologizing for his son's betrayal. Eventually, Tyler moved away, and no one talked about him anymore. But his absence wasn't a comfort. It was a scar. The months after the non-wedding passed in a blur of pain and rebuilding. I moved to a new city, found a new apartment, and buried myself in work. It was the only thing that distracted me. But even then, there were nights when I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, asking myself the same question over and over again. Why me? How could the universe be so cruel as to let me fall in love twice, only to rip it away both times? My ex-wife had already destroyed the best parts of me, and I'd barely managed to rebuild. Emily's betrayal felt like confirmation that I was doomed to be broken forever. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, something strange began to happen. The pain didn't disappear, but it became quieter. The memories of Emily and Tyler still hurt, but they started to lose their grip on me. I realized something important during that time. None of this was my fault. Emily's betrayal, Tyler's selfishness, my ex-wife's affair, they weren't reflections of me. They were reflections of who they were. Weak, dishonest, self-serving. I had trusted them because I was a good person, not because I was a fool. But being good didn't mean I had to be a doormat. I promised myself that I would never again ignore my gut instincts, never again stay silent when something felt wrong. I would protect my heart, not by building walls around it, but by setting boundaries and trusting that I deserved respect and honesty. One night, as part of my healing, I wrote a letter to Emily. Emily, you were my light after years of darkness. I thought you were different, that you were my second chance at happiness. But you weren't. You were just another lesson in how cruel people can be. I don't know if you found peace, and to be honest, I don't care. You took something beautiful and destroyed it, and I'll never forgive you for that. But I'm not writing this for you. I'm writing this for me. Because today, for the first time, I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't see a broken man. I saw someone who survived, someone who's still standing. I'm moving on, Emily. And you? You'll just be a chapter one closed forever. Asterisk. I never sent it. I didn't need to. Writing it was enough. A year later, I stood at another overlook. Not the one where I proposed to Emily, but a new one. The sky was just as breathtaking, the wind just as cold. But this time, I wasn't haunted by ghosts. I didn't know if I'd ever fall in love again. I wasn't even sure I wanted to. But I knew this much. I wasn't the same person who'd cried on that kitchen floor after catching his wife's texts. I wasn't the same man who'd listened to his cousin brag about a betrayal that felt like a knife to the heart. I was stronger now. Maybe still scarred, but stronger. Life wasn't fair. I'd learned that the hard way. But if nothing else, I still had one thing left that no one could take from me, myself. And for now, that was enough.